Hello everyone, I'm glad you're here today. This is Cove Media, and whether you're here to watch, learn, or just decompress for a little bit, I'm glad you're here and I hope you're doing wonderful today. So, as our journey has progressed, we've been building our own version of Pong. We have a very functioning game, a full loop. We can start the game, play it, win or lose, and restart it. So, to first thing first, we're going to check to make sure our code's working right. There we go. Our game's fully playable. And everything seems to be working properly. I'm going to let myself lose. And there we go. Pretty simple loop. We can press space and we can keep going. So from here on out, we're just going to be adding additional things to the game to make it look better, make it a little bit more enjoyable. And so a big thing we're doing today is we're going to be adding game states. So currently we really just have two game states, and that's us playing the game and our game over. And so we're going to be adding some things and changing. They're going to look like big changes, but they're not going to be. They're going to look like big changes, but not terribly big changes on how the code is running. And most of the work is going to be in our running or a while running loop, and that's where most of the game is happening. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come up here where our player or these variables sit, and we're going to be adding one that will be the game over variable will be going away at the end of this, but we're going to make all of our changes and come back and clean it up. So our new variable is called game state, and it's a string, and we're just going to call it start. So today we're going to be adding a start screen or a start game state, which will be our title screen, our play state, which is what we already have, that's what we start the game in, and then we will have our game over game state, which we already have, but we'll just be moving it over to the game state. Now we could just have a variable for every game state, but this just keeps it a little bit nice, a little more simple, and it's what we're going with for this game. Alright, so moving right along, first thing we're going to do in our while running is we're going to be moving our screen.fill up to the top. And that's just to make sure that background is there regardless of the game state. All of this will be moving in, but we'll get to that. So you can either just type it up, or in my case I'm going to control X, which is the cut shortcut. Scrolling to the top, enter a couple times, and there we go. So now we're just going to go top to bottom for our changes. So this right here, nothing happens to it. So from there, enter a couple times, shift tab, and this is where the changes start. So we're going to have now we're going to be using an else if statements to define our game states and where they're at. So our first game state is going to be our start. And this spelling is important, and I'll show that in a little bit. I was going over everything earlier and I made a small mistake, and I think it'll be a good thing to show y'all. So from here we're going to add a few things. We want a title screen, so we need the title. So make a new variable. And our font, and this is our title, so we're just going to call it Pong. The rest of it's the same as what we've been doing. Oh, true. And our text color. And we're going to just go ahead and get both of our variables for this. And so we have the title, and then we're going to have our prompt, and this is just going to tell the player how to start the game. I'm going to have them press the enter key to start. Same thing. All right. Send our title to our window. I forgot the parentheses on the end of the get width. And then our height. I apologize if I'm ever pausing. I have my notes on another screen, and so sometimes I'm just looking over, or I may be scrolling through them to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And typically when you're doing this, these are going to be very similar, but this plus 60 actually pushes it. This will push it down further, so this just makes sure this text is underneath our title. So next, a lot of this, these three lines are going to be the same, but we're changing the rest of it. So we're just going to highlight it here. We have our keys. And that's just creating a variable to help the game track in the key presses. In this case, we're wanting to check for when the enter key is pressed. Now, something to note, while most of us are familiar with it being the enter key, that is actually not what it is in the system. It is the return key. So if you're ever trying to do something and you want that the enter key to be interactable, it's the return key. And now we're getting rid of this game over. We're adding game state, and we want to change it to play. So now I'm going to highlight, well, actually not the whole thing. So instead of if looking to see if game over is false or not, we're going to change it to elif or else if our game state is equal to play. And something else, if y'all don't know, the double equals is different from equals because this is telling it to see if this is the same. It's a comparison. So that's important whenever you're doing any of this. So now a lot of this will not be changing. First thing, the big change is we're just going to grab this, we're going to highlight it, and you can press tab, it'll move it in because we want this to be in the play game loop, the game state. Then the only other thing we're going to change is under our win conditions. We're no longer using the game over variable. We're going to be changing that to game state, and that will be game over. All right. And then next change, or one of the last things we're going to be changing, is this if game over. We're going to change to elif, our game state is our game over. So thankfully, a lot of this is staying the same, but we have to look for a key press. Or we're telling the user to press space, so we have to look for that key press for the user. And when the space key is pressed, we're just telling it to change the game state. And I'm going to actually mess up here a second because I just want to show this. So upper and lower case do matter, and we're about to see that. So quite a few changes there. So we're just going to make sure everything is working correctly. All right, looks good. I'm going to press enter to start. There we go. Our game will start. Everything appears to be working like it should. I'm just going to let the AI score on me a little bit. All right, now hit space, but a blank screen. And that's why checking your code is very important, because this is definitely a bug, but this bug is never going to show up in an error in the code, because it's not really causing an error in the code. It's looking for something that's not there. Now, something we could do, and we'll do that in another lesson, probably do that in another lesson, is we could just add an else statement that if for some reason this is wrong, or the game state goes something that we didn't expect, it'll give some sort of error. But really probably don't need that for this, but just remember to check your code, make sure everything is running right or spelled correctly, so you don't run into small issues like that. Thankfully that's not too big. So everything's changed. We have start, a play, and a game over. So now we can come up, and our code editor actually has it. If you see it's a little bit dimmer than everything else, that's just telling you it's not used in the code at all. So now we can pretty well safely just take it, delete it. No longer, we don't need it anymore. We're just going to kick it out. So we have our basic game states in play. And I think I'm going to call that for today. I don't like these lessons getting too long. Now, one more game state we'll be adding. We'll be adding it next lesson as a pause game state. It'll be not terribly involved, but just a little bit more, because one of the things we will be implementing there is just allowing the player to click with their mouse, because we'll be having a few options there. Otherwise, again, I'm so glad you stopped by today. Hope you have a wonderful week. Just stay safe and stay good. I'll see you next time.